Donald Trump is terrified of BBC, and he is choking in court. As I'm sure you know, back in December of 2025, Donald Trump sued the British broadcast channel for $10 billion, claiming that they defamed him in some 2024 panorama documentary that no one really ever saw, where the BBC spliced together clips of Donald Trump around the January 6th insurrection. And Donald Trump said, the way you spliced it made it seem like I was encouraging the insurrection. So you defame me and you owe me $10 billion. Okay. So Trump sued the BBC in 2025. The BBC started aggressively pursuing discovery in the case, saying, okay, you say you're injured $10 billion. Turn over all of your financial records. Then Donald Trump was like, I don't have any financial records. And they're like, okay, who has it? I guess my trusts have it, the Donald J. Trump Trust. So BBC said, okay, we want the discovery of the trusts. Give us that information. Show us how you claim you were injured $10 billion when in fact you've made $4 to $6 billion at least grifting in the Oval Office. Donald Trump refused to turn over discovery, but he continued to harass the BBC in the case where he sued them for $10 billion. He sued him also in Florida federal court. The BBC turned over all of their discovery obligations. They produced 90,000 records. And then Donald Trump and his lawyers refused to turn over any records. So the BBC filed a motion to compel, turn over your tax returns, turn over your financial records. Let's see it. Trump refused to do it. Trump refused to give deposition dates. Trump didn't want to actually even have to litigate the case, a case that he sued for $10 billion. And the BBC then got a court order from the federal judge ordering that the documents all be turned over by today, by August 6th. And so Donald Trump is refusing to turn over his financials. He's refusing to turn over his tax returns. And instead, he filed an emergency motion and said, emergency, we can't turn this over. We're going to suffer irreparable harm. You need to stay, judge, your order, and we don't want to turn over the records. And BBC's like, all right, then dismiss the lawsuit against us. You sued us for $10 billion. The judge ordered you turn over the tax returns. There's no emergency. What emergency are you talking about? And Trump's like, if you see it, then you're going to further harm me politically. And BBC's like, you sued us. We didn't sue you. We want to understand why you're suing us for $10 billion. Put up or shut up. Put up or dismiss the case. And then Donald Trump's like, oh, well, what if I did this, judge? Okay, while I filed this emergency motion to not turn over all of my financial records and to not do discovery, judge, what if I change the complaint? I want to amend the complaint. Sure, I argued that I was financially harmed and that my businesses were hurt. But what if I just changed it, judge, and said my reputation was harmed? And I'll just turn this case into a case over a harmed reputation instead of financial harm to my businesses. To which the BBC was like, we're in a court. We're in federal court. There's something called deadlines. And if you wanted to amend the complaint, the deadline to amend the complaint was last March, buddy. And you did not amend it last March. Instead, you were harassing us with discovery. We turned over all the discovery to you, and you blew all of the deadlines. And now we're here in August. You haven't turned over anything. You've been ordered to turn it off. Why do you need to change the complaint? Why do you need to amend it right now? Because all of a sudden you don't want to turn over your financials? And in any event, if you're claiming reputational harm, wouldn't that also be part of your wouldn't we need your financials to also determine what reputational harm you claim? It seems that you've made more money than lost more money. You're blaming the BBC Panorama documentary when you've grifted to the tune of billions of dollars in the Oval Office. Like, what the hell are you talking about? And so there's going to be a ruling very soon, obviously. But as I noted, Trump is terrified of the BBC right now. And he is definitely choking. As we put it over here on the MeidasTouch account, Trump can't handle BBC. Trump is scrambling to stop the BBC from digging into the finances of his business empire after a judge ordered him to turn it over. And what's interesting is that last week, Donald Trump said, I like BBC. He said, I like BBC better than ABC when he was asked by a reporter. When he was asked a question and he said to the reporter, where are you from? And then the reporter said, ABC. He's like, BBC? And the reporter said, no, ABC. And then Trump's like, oh, I like BBC. Here, play this clip right here.
Great. Everybody wants help from our country.
You said the anti-weapon. I'm with ABC. You said the
BBC?
ABC.
Oh, ABC. That's worse.
You said the
I like
anti-weapon.
BBC better than ABC. Go ahead.
The anti-weapon is.
Well, he said he liked BBC, but now he's obviously terrified of it. I mean, we've seen, Donald Trump in the past. He was definitely, he definitely seems frazzled after being scared by by what the BBC is doing right here. You can see him struggling to get off the helicopter. You can see, we'll show some B-roll of Donald Trump right here, clearly unable to handle the import of what the BBC has done to him right here. Let me just show you. Here in the MeidasTouch Network, we go through the court filings. Let me just show you how pathetic Donald Trump is. So this was the filing that he made yesterday. Non-party Donald J. Trump revocable trust emergency motion to stay enforcement of the July 27th order. The July 27th order is the federal court order in Florida saying turn over your financials, turn over your tax returns, turn over all of these business records from the trust because you're claiming $10 billion in damages. So here's what Trump writes. Again, in a lawsuit, Trump filed this lawsuit against the BBC, and now he's declaring an emergency. How pathetic. I'll make this point too before digging into this. Doesn't this remind you a lot, though, of like Donald Trump's behavior in his catastrophic and unlawful war in Iran, right? Epic fury, midnight hammer, when he acts all tough. And then when the other side fights back, he's like, oh, emergency. Can we have a break? Can we do an MOU? We're doing really good negotiations. We're doing a deal. Here's the thing about him. He's a loser. He's a scared, pathetic loser he's not a tough guy. And when you actually punch back and when you fight back, what you find out is that he is terrified by BBC. He's terrified by anybody who pushes back and fights back against him. And this is what he says. Donald J. Trump trusts respectfully move for an emergency stay for the enforcement of the order. This motion, Trump argues, presents a true emergency under the local rules. The nature of the emergency. The BBC's improperly broad subpoena demands the trust's confidential tax, ownership, and financial records for approximately 400 entities. Once the trust were begin handing those records over to BBC, the disclosure could not be undone. Yeah, we know that. You sued. You filed a lawsuit. Turn over the records like every other litigant in court, you pathetic loser. And then he goes and says, the order requires a non-party to begin surrendering its most sensitive financial records in 1 day before the court can decide whether those records are discoverable at all. It's not in 1 day. This litigation's been going on since December 2025. And what do you mean non-party? Okay, you're the party. The Donald J. Revocable Trust is you. I know you want to act like it's some other entity, but these are the games he plays. I'm not the Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust. That's a non-party. No, it's you. You just put it in a trust, you idiot. Then he goes on to say the equities are one-sided. If the trust produces now, the harm is immediate and irreversible. The BBC, after demanding shockingly broad amount of information based clearly on political motivations, will have seen the confidential tax, ownership, and financial records of the trust and roughly 400 entities, and no order sustaining the objections can undisclose them or undo the expense of compiling them. The expense of compiling them? You are so pathetic. You sued them for $10 billion. It's called a lawsuit. You like your headline? You like saying epic fury? You like saying BBC? You like saying that you like suing BBC or that you can take BBC on when you can't? And then you actually have to take it on, and you can't handle BBC, Donald, and you're scared of BBC, Donald. That's what's going on. And anyone who stands up to you, you show how pathetic you are. And he goes on to say, if the court grants a stay, BBC loses nothing. Fact discovery runs for several more months. BBC already holds the trust's public financial disclosures, and it has parallel financial discovery pending against Trump. The case for a stay is stronger still because the ground is shifting under the order. That's when the ground is shifting, Trump argues. What does it even mean the ground is shifting? Dude, just shut up, you pathetic, whiny piece of, right? What do you mean the ground is shifting? Just turn it over. You sued for $10 billion back in 2025. Sue, or dismiss your case. Just dismiss it then, right? Almost same thing with Epic Fury and this catastrophic war. Just leave. Just get the hell out of there, you freaking loser. You don't need to be there. Stop being a predator. Stop harassing people. Stop suing people when you're a scared, pathetic nothing. And he goes on to say over here, plaintiff, meaning him, Donald Trump, has moved for leave to file an amended complaint that updates the damage allegations made by plaintiff, which the BBC used to justify this improperly broad subpoena. They didn't use anything to justify. You sued them for $10 billion and you said your businesses were hurt to the tune of $10 billion. So they said, turn over the records that shows that your businesses went into. They're not using it. You sued them, you freaking predator. What do you expect them to do? If the amendment is granted as it should be, the stated basis for the trust-wide financial protection will be moot. So do you see what this pathetic individual does? He files the lawsuit, he blows all of the deadlines, and then he basically says, August 2026, oh, you've ordered me to turn over the business records because I claim business harm. Now I just want a do-over. Can I change the complaint so it now just says no business damage and it just says reputational harm? Aha! I tricked you. I tricked the system. BBC says, well, no, you blew the deadlines. Dismiss the case. And even if you claim reputational harm, we still should see your business records to see what your reputational harm is for $10 billion. What are you talking about? And then Trump goes on to say, irreparable harm is the core of this motion. Irreparable harm. The BBC's motive cannot be more transparent. To wrongfully exploit this litigation for its own political benefit. They're the defendant. You sued them. You're saying they're wrongfully exploiting being sued for $10 billion? That's what I mean, folks. This isn't a Democrat or a Republican or an independent thing. This creature in the Oval is a loser. He whines, I'm treated unfairly. Oh, the defendant, you're treating me so unfairly, BBC. Why would you do this, BBC, to me, BBC? Why are you making me choke, BBC? It's pathetic. Right? He's a pathetic loser. Now, BBC responds and says there's no emergency and they're not engaged in any political attack on Trump. They've been sued, so they would like to have the financial records that they're entitled to in the lawsuit or dismiss the case. What are we talking about here? Memorandum of law by the BBC in opposition to Donald Trump's emergency motion to stay enforcement of the court's order. The BBC argues, so the Trump's trust emergency motion, it's a transparent effort to evade this court's clear and direct order and to continue to avoid discovery obligations that plaintiff took on when he chose to file this lawsuit. In fact, this is the latest in plaintiff's months-long refusal to provide documents, sworn answers to interrogatories, deposition dates, any meaningful information to support his pursuit of $10 billion from the BBC for a documentary the BBC never even aired in the United States. And the BBC goes over Trump's conduct. Counsel for plaintiff and his trust ignored the BBC's request to meet and confer following the July 21, 2026 discovery hearing, despite clear instructions from the judge to immediately meet and confer. Trump's too busy. He just sues for $10 billion. You try to call up his lawyer. Hey, could we talk about the production of documents that you're required to do? Oh, we're too busy. We'll sue you for $10 billion, but we don't actually want to engage BBC. We just want to say BBC. BBC. We don't want to actually do anything. So BBC then lists what happened. Plaintiff's counsel has delayed or altogether ignored repeated meet and confer requests from BBC counsel, and plaintiff would not provide a date for his deposition until the BBC asked 5 times over a 3-week period. When plaintiff's counsel finally agreed to meet and confer on July 29th, 8 days after the court ordered the parties to begin discussions immediately, plaintiff's counsel refused, as the court further ordered, to inform the BBC's counsel which discovery request will be responded to. That was at the hearing. As of today, plaintiff's counsel still has not told BBC that plaintiff will answer any of the disputed requests. Plaintiff's counsel informed BBC's counsel that they would not provide the long overdue verification of plaintiff's interrogatory responses until the court issues a written order, and even then, plaintiff's counsel insisted that plaintiff need not swear to the responses that he already served. Donald Trump doesn't want to swear under penalty of perjury like every other litigant is required to do in this country. Plaintiff's counsel also has declined to specify when the BBC could expect to receive the production of documents from the Trump Trust. And again, plaintiff himself has made no further production since his fig leaf of a July 14 production of fewer than 1,000 pages of documents downloaded from the internet. So Trump downloaded documents from the internet and produced that and said, aha, we've turned it over to you. And that's all we're going to give in violation of the court order. And so the BBC goes on to say, as a threshold matter, Trump's motion for a stay is hardly an emergency. The Trump Trust frames the its motion as an emergency because once the trust were to begin handing those records over to the BBC, that disclosure could not be undone. But bona fide emergencies involve the health and safety of individuals, the impending departure of a witness with no plans to return to the jurisdiction, the imminent destruction of a building or other property, the imminent deportation of an individual to another country, the need to give critical medical treatment to a patient in a hospital, the threatened loss of civil rights, the immediate threatened loss of an entire business, or when someone is at risk of being denied an essential service. By contrast, a deadline arriving after 2 weeks' notice to produce non-privileged documents which may be designated confidential or attorney's eyes only under the court's protective order, does not justify the rare invocation of the court's emergency procedures. Again, there's parallels here between this and Donald Trump's catastrophic and unlawful war in Iran, right? The deadline happens and Trump's like, emergency, I can't do this anymore. His whole life has been this. And so one of the main learning lessons, if you get sued by Trump, just notice his deposition right away. Right away, set his deposition and say, show up. And he won't, because he's a pathetic loser and he's a scared, frightened thing. And that's one of the aspects that's like extra humiliating about this all for the United States. Like the whole thing is humiliating. But at least if he was like strong and tough and stood up and like did the right thing, you'd be like, oh, look, he's a horrible human, but like, he's tough. It's like, no, it's like a horrible human and he's a weak, pathetic loser. And in all of these aspects of life, he loses money, he steals, he defrauds, he bankrupts, he whines, he's disgusting, he's a sexual predator. Separately, he's a felon. He's like a horrible thing. Like a horrible, bad demon thing who's now whining about BBC. Whining. He said he likes BBC. Now he whines about BBC. Okay, then BBC files its opposition to Donald Trump's motion to amend the complaint. Now, 8 months later, after the deadline expired to amend the complaint, Trump now wants to change the complaint purely because he doesn't want to produce the documents. Because he doesn't want to produce the discovery in his case that he filed. He wants to change the case right now. And BBC calls him out for this. The court should deny plaintiff's belated motion to amend the complaint, which was filed over 4 months after the court's deadline for amending pleadings, and which represents a transparent effort to avoid the imminent court-ordered deadline to begin producing financial discovery. Plaintiff principally seeks to amend his complaint to omit references to his business damages in an effort to sidestep the July 27, 2026 order requiring the production of financial records from the Trump Trust by August 6th. His other proposed amendments consist entirely of information that plaintiff has had for months or even years, and which are already fully briefed before the court on the pending motion to dismiss. Because the March 31st, 2026 deadline set in the operative scheduling order for the addition of claims or parties is now months in the past, plaintiff must meet the Rule 16 requirement to show good cause for his delay. He cannot do so. Plaintiff could have limited his damages to reputational harm when he filed the complaint 8 months ago, and he has been on notice of other proposed amendments for months as well, which dooms any effort to meet the requisite good cause standard. And then BBC goes, so why now? Why is he doing it now? Plaintiff's motion to change his complaint arrives on the eve of a court-ordered deadline to produce financial discovery and is a futile and transparent effort to avoid complying with that order. Obviously. Again, despicable. There you have it. I wanted to read it for you so you can see like what Trump filed, and I want to break it down for you because it's more than just his fear of BBC. It's more than just, the BBC thing with him. This is his whole life. This is what he does. He's a harasser. He's a predator. He's a gnat. He's a gnat, right? And BBC knows a gnat when it sees one. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 7 million. Thanks for watching. Pre-order your copy right now of WTF America, the book I wrote with my brothers. Pre-order it now. Thank you so much. We appreciate you for watching.
Breaking news right now, my brothers and I wrote a book. It's called WTF America. And well, doesn't that just say it all? It comes out officially this October, but you can pre-order your copy today. Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description below.